Right, let me adjust this a teeny bit. I want to make sure I got all your smiling faces in here, but I also need to get the board. It's okay. You're a very attractive group, I have to say, and I just think, yeah. All right. Hi, class number 2. How was everything? How was like homework and stuff? And yeah,
Slow for me, but
Slow?
I'm hanging in there.
hanging in. Okay. All right. Well, let's get at it. So we looked at.
Have a blessing, please?
Oh my God! Of course we should. La'asok b'divrei Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Very, very nice. Yes. All right.
Just excitement.
Just excitement. Okay. So we, looked at the Hebrew alphabet stuff. Didn't really do much with that, except I said it was good practice, and we talked about some of the vowels and things like that. And then we finally started to get into chapter 4, right? 4 or 3?
4.
4. Yeah, right. So we started doing. Okay. So let's start by saying, which is starts on page 25. Are there any particular head scratchers or questions or comments that anybody had on any of that stuff? Reasonably clear?
I guess the tenses are a little goofy,
Uh-huh.
They're just so unfamiliar.
Right. It takes, yeah,
That'll take a while too.
it does. It takes some time. They're gonna start you here with the perfect tense or the past tense because it's just the simplest, right? It's fairly simple. In a way, you could say the present tense of the participle is the simplest because there's only 4 verb forms to learn. Because in present tense, or what's really what they call the participle form, there's only the verbs only distinguish between number and gender. So masculine or feminine, singular or plural. When you get into the perfect tense, past tense, and then the future tense, imperfect, then you get not only gender and number, but also first, second, and third person. And there's separate forms for each. But, one thing at a time. Let's do a little bit of some of the warm-up stuff here. I'm going to bring the sound down a little bit because it looks to me like it's overloading. Let's go over to page, I don't know. Yeah, let's go over to page 29 to start. Let me bring this down just a little bit. Okay. And sort of do a little bit of reading together. I'm not going to call anybody. I don't want to start calling on people yet, but let's just do some reading together. So let's read number 1 together. What does number 1 say? Amad, right? Which means? Stood, right? It would be he stood, right? The second one is Bain. What's Bain mean? Son, right? Like when they call somebody up to the Torah, so-and-so, ben so-and-so, right? The third one is who, which frustratingly enough means he, right? Yeah, there we go. The next one is Shama, right? Heard or listened, right? Like Shema Yisrael, we all know that. Go to number 6. The word is Bayit, right? So one thing I don't think I pointed out last time, but I'll point it out now, is that the form of Bayit, which is bait, is called the construct form, okay? The something of something, right? So all these synagogues that are called Beth this and Beth that, I used to think when I was a kid, like, who's this girl named Beth? And why did the Jews keep naming
I got
synagogues
mail
after her?
when I was in Dallas, a
Yeah.
member of Beth Emunah addressed to Beth
Emunah, right? Yeah, exactly. So,
Nice girl.
yeah, right. It's just a good personality. Right. So Beit means like house of. So Beth Israel is Beit Yisrael. There also, for whatever reason, I don't really know the reason why, there is this convention that when a lot of Hebrew words come into English, the letter Taf often comes into English as a TH for reasons that are not clear to me. So so root is Ruth, right? Beit Yisrael becomes Beth Israel, right? Shet, one of Noah's sons, not one of Noah's sons, but one of the early characters in Genesis is Seth, right? And so on. So who knows why? Anyway, okay, so we have Bayit, right? House. 7 is a name we're familiar with. Abraham, obviously Abraham. 8 is Melech, right? King. And we spent a little bit of time last time talking about these segolit nouns and other particles where when you have the 2 times in a row, the first one gets the accent. So Melech and Kelev and other words like that. The next word is Shamar. Okay, so Shamar would be, again, they're giving you the masculine singular past tense because it's the simplest. It's the most stripped down in terms of not having a bunch of prefixes and suffixes glommed on and fancy vowels. Yeah.
Back to the previous. Any 2 vowels repeated?
N-
Or just the eh?
No, the repeated. The accent goes on the first one. So. I'm not going to get into this right now. There's this. Ooh, it hurts to pull that cap off. Let's do it that
Like the
way.
double patach.
Yeah. So
Namar.
yeah, double segel. The accents on the first one. Double patach. Accents on the first one. Cholam chaser. The dot that's up at the top, right, followed by a segel. Is the first one. So like, you don't say Boker Tov, you say Boker Tov, right?
Patach hirik.
Patachirik, right? Bayit. Bayit, right? It should be like this. Bayit, right? Or water is
Mayim.
Mayim.
Mine.
Now, it occurs to me, I don't know whether this is the reason, quote unquote, why, but it occurs to me that there is a commonality to all of these. And there may have been one time in Israel when I needed to take an exam on this and I've just, just forgotten. It's been a while. But you know how like sometimes you wonder like, well, why is it one of those and not one of those?
Yeah.
Right? Or in Israel, they pronounce this more like not a, right? So why is it that and not that right? Or why is it that, which in Israel is more like I? It's a little bit closer to a shva, but when you get a yud after it, it becomes e, like it's elongated. So there's this idea. Do you want to go down this rabbit hole for a second?
Yeah.
Sure.
Teeny little bit. I just, one of the things I kept saying last time when we were talking about some of the stuff, Sarah, was that with some of these things, it's not that you need to know it, but sometimes it's reassuring to know that it's not just arbitrary and chaotic. There's actually like a
Right.
reason why. So with this here, there is a distinction that is made grammatically between long vowels and short vowels. Okay. This is a long vowel. A is a long vowel. E with the yud after it is a long vowel. E is short. I by itself is short. This is a long vowel. Right? The patach is a short vowel. Okay? So,
They're both
yeah, right. Except if you remember sort of in Ashkenazi Hebrew, this is but this is more like
Yeah.
And sometimes it's still even in Sephardic Hebrew, because you don't say b'chal levavcha uv'chal nafshecha, you say b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha, and it's that. So how do you know when it's what's called a kamatz katan, which means a small kamatz? So here's the deal. This is like fools go where angels fear to tread, right? So here's it's like it's like sex. We'll tell you about it when you get older, right? So I'll keep making that joke as long as Allison giggles. I'll keep making that joke. When you're older, we'll explain to you, which means I'll be telling that joke the whole class, apparently. No, I love a good audience. So that you make a distinction grammatically between open syllables and closed syllables. Okay. I remember Yossi, our grammar teacher in Israel, the Hebrew word for syllable is havara. And we talk about havara petucha, an open syllable, and havara, I think he used to say stuma, which means like a sealed or a closed syllable. So basically, an open syllable is one that ends with a vowel sound. A is a vowel sound, right? A is a vowel sound. U is right? An open syllable. Oh, this is the other thing too. I forgot to mention this. This is a long vowel. That is actually the short version of that of the O vowel. This, right, is the U, right? Shuruk, it's called, is a long U, but the 3 diagonal dots, right? That's a short one. Okay. The basic idea is a syllable that ends in a vowel sound is an open syllable. A syllable that ends in a consonant sound like t or d, right, or lamed like l, right, that's a closed syllable. So generally speaking, long vowels go in open syllables, right, and short vowels go in closed syllables.
And there's a distinction even if they sound the same,
Mhm.
like oo and oo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. This is what in yeah, it's what's called. I'm gonna move this a little closer. It's what's called dikduk, which means grammar, but it comes from a word meaning to be like precise or exacting, because like that's what it is. Yeah, I mean this is how you actually know which vowel to use. And I had to take exams on this stuff. And then on top of it, we had to take exams on biblical grammar, which has its own mishigas, as Moses said, right? So, right? Yeah. Okay. So, right. So here's where you get like why it's bechol levavcha, right? Because kaf lamed, kal or kol, is a closed syllable. Right? It's a closed syllable. And yet, it's supposed to take that vowel. So what happens is that vowel becomes a small kamatz, like o. It's a little, it gets to be a little bit like of a tautology. It kind of like keeps sort of looping back on itself. But again, my point here is not that you should ever have to know this really for any, practical reason. It's just, it's not arbitrary. There are all these little rules operating about which vowel it is. Okay? And sometimes, Ellen, I'm pointing to you here because you know from all the Torah reading that you do about like the Korean Ketiv, like sometimes it will be written one way, but then it will say, no, you actually like pronounce it like that. It has to do with like some of this vowel stuff and yeah. Okay, let's go on.
I have a ton of questions about like stuff that I see repeatedly, and sometimes I have to listen to like there's some things on the web where you can like listen to how things are pronounced versus like just being able to pronounce it correctly.
Right. Right.
I'll ask those as we come to.
Yeah. No, please do. And sometimes I might have to say I don't know, but I'll.
Well, let me ask one because it has to do with the Kamatz Katan and whether or
Yeah.
not it is, but it's an expression like Kodesh Kodeshim, right?
Right.
The holy.
Well, then you get the
But
Chataf Kamatz with you get this goofy thing where it's like that, but also with that.
But
Yeah.
but sometimes not. But I hear it as the old, but
Kodesh
we even out
Kodashim,
that.
yeah.
So is it always Kodesh or is it Kodesh Kodesh?
No, it's Kodashim.
Kodeshim.
There was a time when I had to know why to pass an exam. I don't remember. Right, but yeah, there's like reasons why. We got tested on that stuff. Like why is it this vowel, not that vowel? Yeah. Remember also that the vowel signs that are associated with the Torah text I don't think we've even gotten into this yet. We haven't talked about Masorah, like the people who like put the vowels into the text, right? The Masoretic text, right? So, the text existed without vowel signs before it was vocalized. And eventually these people that we call the Masoretes, which means like the keepers of tradition, wanted to fix the pronunciation. So they put the vowel signs in, out of a concern that if you only had a text with consonants, that the pronunciation would become corrupt, right? I don't want to take time to do it now, but if somebody reminds me next time, I'll give you, 5 minutes on where Jehovah comes from, which is really fun. We'll do that. All right, we keep going. So Shamar, number 10 is a name, David, right? And we learned last time why there's a dagesh in the Dalid. Right, because it's one of these, we call them jokingly the Beged Kefet letters, right? That when they're the first letter of the word, they pick up a dot, so David. And we said it comes from the root dod, which means beloved. So that's what David means.
And are the Beged Kefetz, are those the light or the weak Dagesh?
It's the light or weak Dagesh. It's the Dagesh Kal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
Okay, number 11, Davar.
Word.
Yeah, word or thing, right? Again, you see the Dagesh and the Daled, right? Number 12, we have Zachar, right? To remembered, he remembered, but it's also the root of Yizkor when we talk about the Yizkor service, the memorial service, right? Remembering. Then we have Malach, right? To reigned or ruled. We have accent on the first syllable, Na'ar, a young man, right?
Right?
And then we have Ha-Na'ar, which would be the young man. Okay.
And that accent is on the hey? Hana'ar.
No, Ha-Na'ar.
Hana'ar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Still Na'ar, yeah, yeah. And there's a dot in the nun in Hana'ar because that's technically what Ha does. It's actually the Ha plus a dot in the first letter of the word it connects to. In the interest of time, because I want to move on to new stuff, is there anything else on page 29 or at all that anybody's got questions about?
I wanted to ask on
Yeah,
page
please.
30, number 4.
Uh-huh.
What's the difference between the man guarded versus the man was guarding? Because you wouldn't put Ha'ish, Haya, Shamar.
Not at this point,
So-
no.
Is it the same?
It's the same. It's the same. They make that point, I think, earlier on that it can mean the man. Yeah. Now, if you wanted to say, pardon?
They did the same thing on number 5.
Yeah,
I think it was just.
it's the same deal. Yeah, yeah,
One has this.
yeah. You know,
One has this.
you can also, you know, if you wanted to get fancy, and you wanted to say, you know, the man used to guard, you would say like Haya Shomer, which is a whole other way of doing it. So in modern Hebrew, yeah.
Right.
All right. Yeah, please.
And on number 5 also.
Number 5.
So in the first one, Hana'ar, there's a Dagesh in the Nun, and the second one there isn't.
Where are you looking now?
And number
Number
5.
Number 5 under number 6.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, number
No,
5.
under-
What page are we on?
Under number 5, on page 30.
The young man was guarding.
And a young man had guarded, but Hana'ar is with the Dagesh.
Yeah.
And the Nun and.
Right, and then with a
Na'ar
young
is
man, it would just be Na'ar. Yeah.
Without a Dagesh.
Yeah, unless it's one of those Beged Kefet letters, yeah, no, it doesn't take it. Okay? All right. Oral review, any questions about that? Because if not, we're going to move on to new stuff.
I have one more question.
Please.
Sorry.
No.
The same exercise, but number 6.
Uh-huh.
I don't print. I only can do cursive.
Uh-huh.
So where do you put the Dagesh?
I had that same
In the
question.
mem.
Thank you.
In the mem? I mean, if
In
you,
a-
yeah.
In a
Yep.
cursive.
I mean,
in a cursive mem.
I would say God bless you for even caring about the negation of family. But, yeah. I mean, so let's do, I'm doing cursive, right? So I would do like the king, right? Right? And I would probably just stick it over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think if you actually did that in Israel, first of all, you wouldn't be writing vowels. Second of all, if you did, they would know you were a foreigner. Well, actually, it was funny because our Yossi, the guy who taught us dikduk, who taught us, grammar and Hebrew grammar, used to say that the hardest people to teach biblical Hebrew grammar to were Israelis, because they were convinced that all their mistakes were right. Just like.
Like with everything else.
Yeah, ma pitom, what are you talking about all of a sudden, right? Right. All right. So we are going to tap dance our way into the hearts of millions on page 32 with new vocabulary. So we're getting into feminine now. Okay. The first word is av, right? Which means father or ancestor too. It's nice that they point that out. I think, Hebrew's a Semitic language, and in that family of languages, Arabic is a Semitic language also. And I think that the Semitic languages all have certain vocabulary in common. So I think, don't quote me on this, don't tape me. But I think that in all the Semitic languages, the word for father is some form of av or abba. In Arabic, it's abu.
It's definitely together.
You know, I don't know Ugaritic or Akkadian; those are dead. You know, but probably in those too. All right, the next word is el, which is the preposition to, right? You know, El Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, for example. And it's a separate word. Isha is the word for woman or wife. Now, here is a funky little thing. Look, there's a dot. There's a dagesh. I'll tell you, it's a dagesh chazak in the shin. You want to know why? It'll cost you. No. Okay. Because another one of the there are two main things that I can think of. I don't know about the ha, but there's two main things that I can think of that the dagesh chazak tells you. One of them is it tells you that a letter has been doubled. But instead of doubling the letter, they just put a dot to show you it's a doubled letter. So like last time, and if you don't remember this, it really doesn't matter. But I think that last time when we were talking about the different, like that in this PL verb case, that there's always a dot in the middle letter. That dot in the middle letter of the root tells you it's like doubled, right? So like in the word, like, you know, Ellen, right? All those 800 million places in the Torah where it says, Vayedaber Adonai al Moshe lemor, right? Vayedaber spoke, right? God spoke to Moses. So when the word Vayedaber, if you were going to transliterate it, it would actually be like Vayedab, and then you would put two B's, or like two bets, right? So the dot in Vayedaber, that's a PL verb, is a doubled bet, technically, okay? Which automatically, by the way, makes that the end of a closed syllable, which means the vowel that comes before it has to be a short vowel. It's like dominoes, like everything like falls together. So one thing that the dagesh chazak will indicate is a doubled letter. The other thing it indicates grammatically is that a letter dropped out, because sometimes in conjugations in various other places, letters drop. Okay. I'll show you something that no other Hebrew teacher in North America will give you. Actually, I should have thought of this and brought it in. I have this on my office, but I drew cartoons when I was in college, and then I kept doing it to entertain my classmates in rabbinical school, because Hebrew grammar itself is super entertaining. So, you know, we had to like jazz it up, liven it up a little bit. The expression for this idea of that a dagesh chazak comes when a weak letter, because certain letters are called weak letters, meaning they tend to sort of drop out. Did you learn this stuff when you were no? When certain letters drop out, and a particularly weak letter of all things is the letter nun. When nun is the first letter of a word or the first letter of a root, this is not super important, when you conjugate or you put like a prefix before it, it will tend to just drop. I think it drops probably because it was just, in a lot of cases, it's like awkward to pronounce. So here's an interesting thing, right? So here's this word. Here, we'll sort of use this. Here's this word isha, which means woman or wife, right? And we know that there is a dagesh, there's a dagesh chazak, right, in the middle. So here's an interesting thing. You would think that the plural of women would be something like ishot, like, because usually in Hebrew, words that end in ot are feminine plural, but it's not. Oddly enough, it's really irregular, is nashim.
Always wondered about that.
Right. Now, you know, in addition to the sort of strangeness of the fact that this is normally like a masculine plural ending, im, right? Where the heck did the nun come from, right? Well, the nun, apparently this word originally was insha, but it dropped. So really the dot in the shin of the dagesh chazak is for the nun that disappeared. And then in the plural it comes back, nashim. Yeah. You know, I'll give you another cool example of this.
Still doesn't explain why it's not in my shot.
The interesting thing is, it is when you go into the construct form, the something of something, it goes to nishot.
Huh.
You know, nishot ha'anashim would be the wives of those men. Search me, right? I'll give you another really good one. So there is a beloved Torah portion. In fact, I was just studying this with one of your upcoming students, Ellen, called Vayigash, right? Which means he approached. It's one of the climactic passages in the story of Joseph and his brothers, where Joseph has like yanked the brothers all over the place, and he's framed his younger brother Benjamin and stuck the cup in his sack, and he has huge tension. And Joseph says, "Well, you know, somebody has to be punished for this, right?" And all the brothers say, "We're going to be your slaves," you know. And Joseph says, "No, I'm a fair guy. I'm only going to punish the one who actually stole the thing from me." So Benjamin, who he knows, because, you know, right, who's his favorite, right, his only full brother, right? Benjamin stays with me. The rest of you can go back, right? And then the next portion begins, right? They keep you on a cliffhanger. The rabbis do. That's where they divide the portion. The next week, Vayigash Yehuda, Judah, Joseph's brother, the one who's responsible for throwing him in a pit to begin with, right? Such a great story, right? Steps forward and says, you know, we have this old father, and he's already lost one of his sons, of course, which is Joseph, right? So it's so like ironic and dramatic. And if we don't return, he says, I pledged myself to my father, which he did, that nothing would happen to Benjamin if we came down here to Egypt seeking food. And if I have to go back again to our elderly father and he sees the boy's not with us, it will take his gray head down to Sheol in grief. You know, he'll die. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to have to live with what's going to happen to my father, right? And at that point, Joseph sends everybody out of the room, breaks down, starts to cry, says, I'm Joseph. The brothers are all like, it sounds like they stood there, right? And he gathers them in. Okay, so Vayigash means he approached, right? So Vayigash is written like this, I think. If that's not exactly what Vayigash looks like, it's close. Okay, Vayigash. So if you look up Vayigash, there's a dot in the Gimel, right? Because the root to approach, like to come forward, is actually Nagash, right? But instead of making it Vayingash, which I take it is a little bit hard to say, the nun in the first position is weak, it becomes Vayigash, and that dot tells you there's a nun. So, the way our teacher Yossi, I'm channeling Yossi today, who by the way was apparently like incredibly good looking. This is what I was told by all the women. He had sparkling blue eyes. Anyway, because all my female classmates would like sit there and like grin at Yossi as he like put, you know, stuff on the board. That's very important information for you. So the expression was dagesh chazak, right? This is like Vayigash is an example of dagesh chazak, a strong dagesh, v'nun shenofelet, and a nun that fell away. Dagesh chazak, v'nun shenofelet. So I made this cartoon of a nun falling over a cliff with a dot, a dagesh, like pushing it off the cliff, saying, see you later, sucker, right? It was like muscle-bound dagesh. It was like dagesh chazak, a strong dagesh, and a nun falling over a cliff, right? That was it. And somehow in Israel that was funny. All right. Okay. So, yeah, so all that. So we go back down to, that was all about, that was a long digression on Isha. Imagine what we could do with other words. All right. Behema is cattle. This is one of those things also, not to go too far off the track here, but God, you know, like having parents who were like second generation Americans and grew up, you know, speaking Yiddish, and I grew up in a home where my parents spoke Yiddish. You just became aware of how much Hebrew there is stuck into Yiddish, just straight up Hebrew. It's not just Judeo-German. So my mother would talk about a behemoth, right? Which could mean either somebody without manners, you know, right? They used to have this expression, it's better in the Bahamas, which my mother thought was a riot because to her it sounded like it's better with the Bahamas, you know, right? Which might be how you would feel about some of your relatives, right? It'd be better with a bunch of Bahamas, right? Bat is daughter. He is she. How cruel is that?
Yeah.
Right? But he is she, and who is he? Halach would be he walked or went. So we're still, again, whatever sexism or misogyny there may be encoded into this grammar, that's not why they're giving you the masculine forms. They're giving it to you just because they're stripped down to the root. They're just simple to see what the root is. Okay, halach.
It's also like the dictionary or the lexical form. You can look them up a lot, the verbs.
Really?
Oh yeah,
well,
considered a lexical. form.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that. Okay, good, very good. By the way, this is also where the word halacha comes from, right? We say halacha means Jewish law, but it means the path, right? The way to go. Ooh, that got an O from a bunch of people. Yeah, very good.
So it's, I mean, even without a pronoun or a noun, it's halach is he walked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's no there.
Yeah, right. So in the participle or present tense, where it only makes a distinction between gender and number, how many and what gender, there you kind of need an explicit subject, right? But in the past tense, halach by itself means he walked.
It doesn't mean she walked.
Can't mean, that would be halcha.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that would be halcha.
Got it.
And again, like as English speakers,
Next page.
isn't like as English speakers, like we're not aware of how sort of like vague English is about the gender number stuff, but Hebrew is very explicit. And as I said last time, this is why, like in Israel, there are people working on the whole sort of non-binary gender thing. How do you express that in a language that's so gendered? Okay, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. Right? Now, it's interesting too, right? So you see how they gave you an accent mark over the Lamed? Because it's not Yerushalayim, right? It's Yerushalayim. And there, I had it on the board before, right? The Ai, the Patach Hirik, is another one of those, the first syllable gets accented, right? Min is from, here's another example, Mitzrayim, like Mayim, like Yerushalayim, right? Like Lechayim, right? Okay? The A, right? Mishpacha, again, props to my mother, mishpacha in Yiddish, right? Okay, and let's see. Oh, so here's an interesting thing. So why is there a dot grammatically in the pay? Okay, there's a dot because right, it's one of those beged kefet letters, but it's not the first letter of the word. So why is there a dot? There's a dot because it commences a new syllable, which is like beginning a word. So the first syllable is mish, and then it's pacha.
Okay.
You really don't have to know that,
No,
but
no,
if you're
no.
interested,
Dot.
By the way,
yeah,
you said last time that there's no Hebrew word that starts with a f
native
sound.
Hebrew word, yeah.
Okay, native, because I remember when we were there, first night in Jerusalem, there was a KFC,
Uh-huh.
and on the building, it didn't
Yeah.
say Kentucky, it said in Hebrew, Kentucky
Fried.
Fried Chicken.
Chicken.
Yep.
Yeah, well, you know how you make a ch in Hebrew? If you want to say Charlie Chaplin in Hebrew, you make a tzadi, and then you make a little thing. This little guy here is literally called a chupchik. You put a chupchik after it, and that's how you express a ch.
Ah,
Just like if you need to do Wendy Wasserstein and not Wendy Wasserstein, the playwright, right? You put a vav and then a little chupchik, and it becomes a W. That's how you indicate a W.
Pretty sure some of my relatives said chicken.
Chicken. Probably. All right, we keep going. Mishpacha we have na'ara, so now we have the feminine of na'ar, right? Young woman, na'ar young man, na'ara young woman. Ruth is Ruth, Sarah is Sarah. The word Sarah, by the way, means princess.
Captain Princess.
Huh?
Captain Princess.
Captain princess.
Yeah, that's what Sarah Jew and I came up with, because a sar is a captain.
Is an officer, yeah, a
Yeah,
captain, right?
So a Sarah,
Uh-huh.
so we call ourselves Captain Princess.
Nice. There's a really, her career is just blowing up, an up and coming terrific singer and performer. Her real name is Michaela Strauss, M-O-T. But a lot of her stuff is like LGBTQ visibility, a lot of her sort of like, love songs and so forth. And she goes by the stage name King Princess.
Oh.
Yeah, she's awesome, by the way. She's really great. All right. So gender of nouns, masculine and feminine. In English, only a few nouns are specifically masculine or feminine. For example, man, woman, waiter, waitress. In Hebrew, all nouns are either masculine or feminine, even though the things they describe may have no male or female qualities at all. So again, like a lot of languages, right? Inanimate objects have gender also. The noun davar, word, is masculine and follows the rules for masculine nouns. The noun mishpacha, family, is feminine and follows the rules for feminine nouns. There is nothing male or female about either a word or a family. Every Hebrew noun is either masculine or feminine, and you must remember which gender it is. Now, there are some tip-offs, which is usually words that end in little t vowel, kamatz, hey, ah, are usually feminine, right? Torah is feminine. Na'ara, right? Girl, young woman is feminine. Kippah, yarmulke, right? Head covering is feminine. But there are some prominent exceptions. I mean, when in doubt, guess, right? But there are some prominent exceptions to that, like Lila.
Yes.
How do you say good night in Hebrew?
Oh.
Lila Tov. If it was feminine, it would be Lila Tova,
Mm.
right? So there's just an example, right? And you just learn them. Or you use cheats like, wait a minute, is it Lila Tova or Lila Tov, right? Okay, all right, so feminine singular nouns. Feminine singular nouns, we're at the bottom third of page 32 there. Feminine singular nouns can often be identified by specific characteristics. Nouns ending with kamatz he are usually feminine. Nouns ending with the letter taf are usually feminine. Emet is feminine. Bat is feminine. Okay? There are all these kind of hip, modern Hebrew female names that end in eat, shlomit, right?
Ilanit.
Huh?
Ilanit.
Ilanit, right? You know, so those are feminine names also. Names of cities or countries are always feminine. Yerushalayim is feminine. Mitzrayim is feminine. Place names are feminine. Masculine singular nouns. There are no characteristic endings for the masculine singular noun because it's hard to be Jewish, so why should it be? Why should it be orderly or predictable? If a singular noun does not have a feminine or taf, it is probably masculine singular. However, there are some exceptions. The only certain way to determine the gender of a noun is to look it up in a Hebrew dictionary. Look it up, Shlomo. It's like tough. You're in the army now. We will indicate the gender of each noun on the vocabulary list for each chapter or glossary in the back of the book. Okay, and there is a very nice glossary in the back. Gender of verbs. In Hebrew, every verb has both masculine and feminine forms, masculine and singular. In the last chapter, all the verbs were used in their masculine singular form, and they all had the same pattern of vowels. The pattern for the masculine singular verb form in the perfect tense is shown below. Kamatz patach, right? The X's just indicate 3 letters of a root. So in that, just to make it explicit, in that drawing that they've given you here, right? Reading Hebrew, right? This is the first letter of the root. This is the second letter of the root. This is the third letter of the root, right? And the pattern of the vowels for he did something, right, which is going to be just simple, just the root itself, is going to be like that. Shamar, he guarded. Amad, he stood, and so on. Okay, because a lot of conjugating verbs is taking the root and putting it through a series of pattern vowel changes, and those pattern vowel changes is how you conjugate. There are also prefixes and suffixes that enter in, but in its simplest form, right, this is it. All right, so here's a whole bunch, right? Shama, he heard. I'm in the middle of page 33 there. Shamar, he guarded. Zachar, he remembered. Amad, he stood. Halach, he went. Malach, he ruled. Okay? Feminine singular. To make the feminine singular form of these verbs, a he is added to the 3 letters of the masculine singular verb form. I'll pull this apart in a second. There is also a different pattern of vowels. The pattern for the feminine singular verb form in the perfect tense is shown below. So, go up to the masculine for a second, right? The first one of the masculine just above is shama, right? Mm-hmm. Now go down to the first one below. It's sham'a. So what have you done? You've added kamatz he to the end. He heard shama. She heard sham'a. That's kind of subtle, right? Because the ayin kind of makes it sort of a subtle little difference. Look above again. Shamar, he guarded. She guarded. Look down at the bottom. Shamra, he shamra. Okay. I want to circle back to something we talked about last time in a minute, but let's go through all these. Go to the top again, top middle, right? Zachar, he remembered. Go down to the bottom. Zachra, she remembered, right? You've just added the kamatz he at the end. Look above again. Amad in the middle, he stood, right? She stood. Amda. There's actually a Passover song. It's not one of our greatest hits, but it begins with the words "Vehi sha'amda lavotenu." Vehi sha'amda. So he means she, right? And amda, she stood, for our ancestors. All right, look at the last column above. Halach, he went. Go down. She went is what?
Halacha.
Halcha. Okay, look above. Malach, he ruled because he was a king. She was a queen, so what's her verb?
Malcha.
Malcha, which is very close to Malka, which is the name for queen. Now, without going down a big old rabbit hole here, right? You remember last time, but I want to circle back because I want to show you I want to make a connection here. Last time, I think, we had this whole little conversation about these combination vowels, like that guy, right? Or like this crazy guy, right? Or like, what was the other one? That one. I guess those are the two big ones, right? And what I said was, when you get these crazy combination vowels, what it's telling you is, grammatically, the vowel should have been a shva, but the problem is what? We expanded it into an a or an e. Why? Because it ended up under a guttural letter that would have made this unpronounceable, right? Because you can't put a shva under a hey. There's nothing to say with that under a hey, right? You can't put it under an ayin, because like this and this is unpronounceable. You can't put it under an aleph. Under a chet, it would be pretty torturous to just say like that, right? There's not a whole lot to say, right? And sometimes I think you also see it under a resh, because if a resh is rolled, like, it's not like our resh with our lips, but like a uvular, like resh, right? That would also be hard. So what am I talking about when I say grammatically, right? Well, look at, you see the number 33 at the bottom of your page? Right, and then you see right above that, a couple lines above that, in the middle, you've got your X's, that pattern. Right, so look. What it's telling you there is that in the second letter of the root, right, the three X's, right, X, letter 1, right, let's say it was amda, right, letter 1 has a little T vowel under it, right, the kamatz, right. The second letter of the root takes a shva. The third letter of the root takes another kamatz, and then the hey, amda, shamra, halcha, right? Which is absolutely fine because the second letter of these roots has no problem taking a shva. But suppose the second letter of the root was an aleph, or the second letter of the root was an ayin or a chet. Then what do you do? Because you can't pronounce it. Well, what you do in a case like that is one of these gets popped in. That makes sense now? That's why that vowel exists. It's saying, the real vowel should have been, big air quotes, right? A shva. This is what I mean by should have been. Okay? Because that's what that verb form looks like. In fact, these letters here, aleph, hey, ayin, chet, aleph, ayin, hey, chet, resh, sometimes yud, but we'll just stick with these. These are sort of the troublemaker letters in roots, right? These letters are what causes verbs to conjugate in irregular ways, okay? If a root has none of these troublemaker letters in it, it has a nickname. I'm just going to write it in English. It is called shalem, from the word shalom. It is complete or perfect or whole. Okay, so a verb root that doesn't have any troublemaker letters in it is called shalem because it's going to conjugate nice and even and regular. Once you start popping some of these letters in, you're going to get funky things going on. Now, the interesting thing is this, okay? For example, go back to oh gosh. I just lost what page I was on. Oh yeah, on page 33, right? Right under where it says masculine and singular verbs in the center there, it has XXX, right? Okay. There are tons of verb roots that have the letter hey in the third position. Something, something, hey. Okay. The good news is a hey in the third position of a root will cause the same changes in every verb that has a hey in the third position of the root. So you actually end up, if you're learning like formal grammar, you learn how to conjugate verbs with a hey in the third letter of the root. Don't worry about it. Okay? But no, you can write it if you want. No, you don't have to know this, Allison.
Okay.
You do not have to know this. This, again, is all under the umbrella of it's not arbitrary and chaotic. You don't have to know this stuff, but there's rules for all of it. We're not on that level yet. Okay. In fact, most people living in Tel Aviv aren't on that level. All right. Agreement of subject and verb. Wait, okay, we have less than 15 minutes. I apologize again for starting late. In Hebrew, the subject and verb in a sentence must have the same gender. Duh. Most languages, right? If the subject is masculine, the verb form must be masculine. If the subject is feminine, the verb form must be feminine. Hu amad, he stood. He, she, right? He amda, right? Next column, David shamar, David watched or guarded. Sarah, shamra. Yeah? Is that pretty clear?
Yeah.
Roots. Dun, 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 dun. The Hebrew language is built on a system of roots. That's part of Semitic languages. A Hebrew root is a set of letters, usually 3. There are some 4-letter roots, but the huge bulk of them are 3-letter roots. Hebrew is a set of letters, usually 3, which expresses a general idea. Vowel patterns and additional letters are added to a root to give it a specific meaning. Many words with similar meanings are created from each root, right? So, look at, you're going to go across each line from right to left. The root is mem lamed chaf, which has something to do with king or sovereignty or ruler, right? What's the first word, reading from right to left? Malach, he ruled. Okay, go to the next one. What's the middle one say? Melech, there's a king. What's the one at the end?
Malchut.
Malchut, like Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed, right?
Our kingdom.
Right, so ruled, king, and kingdom are all related, right? Okay, go to the next one. By the way, in the Kaddish, you have V'yamlich Malchuto, right? May God, it's a lot like the Lord's Prayer, may God rule, V'yamlich Malchuto, or may God's kingdom rule. Second line, shamar, to watch or to guard, right? So what's the first word? Shamar. What's the second word?
Shomer.
Shomer. Now, shomer, O-A, that actually is the vowel pattern for the simple participle form. So shomer can mean, why is it a participle? Shomer can mean a guard, the noun, a male guard. If it was a female guard, it would be shomeret. Don't worry about that, right? But it can also mean he guards. Hu shomer can mean he is a guard or he is guarding. Okay. Then somebody want to try, or everybody, try reading the last word on that line after shomer?
Mishmar.
Mishmar. Mishmar means prison, place where you're guarded, right? Next line, amad, to stand, right? So amad, he stood. What's the middle one?
Amud.
Amud, right? Lot's wife is turned into Amud Melach. She's turned into a pillar of salt. Amud. Or the Torah text talks about Amud Ha'anan, the pillar of cloud, the Amud Ha'esh, and the pillar of fire that follows the Israelites around. All right. What's the last one?
Omed.
Omed. Omed, which means a place where you stand. Omed. All right. Like Boker and Choshech, right? So it's that O-E, the 2 short vowels. Last line, Zachar, remembered, right? So the first one we have is Zachar. What's the middle one? How do you read that?
Zocher. Zecher.
Zecher, right?
Zecher.
Zecher, right? So you know where you know that from? In the Kiddush, right? It's a remembrance of the word. It's a remembrance of the work of creation. Zecher lema'aseh v'reishit, or it's a remembrance of leaving Egypt. Zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'charta. Right? Let's sing together, boys and girls. Right? So there's Zecher, huh? Yeah. All right. Last one.
Zikaron.
Zikaron. Israel's equivalent of Memorial Day is called Yom HaZikaron. Yeah, Zikaron. So this is, this is why I may have said this last time. Hebrew is not necessarily like a mellifluous, like sexy language like French or Italian is supposed to be mellifluous and sexy, but it is a conceptually beautiful language. It's a very cool language conceptually. The way it's put together is kind of gorgeous, I think. That's why I like teaching this stuff. Okay, so here's a bunch of verb roots. There is an especially important relationship between Hebrew roots and Hebrew verbs. Every verb in Hebrew has a root, generally composed of 3 letters, occasionally 4. In chapters 4 and 5, we introduce the following verbs, and there's your list. The 3 consonants in each of these verbs are the root letters of that verb. We're sort of there already. From now on, each new verb will be introduced in its root form with dots between the consonants without vowels. Okay? By the way, you were talking before about like a lexicon. So in some of the really old early Hebrew English dictionaries, they would actually indicate a root by writing it under a square root sign, like under a square root sign, and then it would give you the three letters, right? And it was called the radical, not because it wanted universal health care or free college, right? It was called.
It's the verb.
Huh? Yeah, well, it's right. I could teach this whole thing in my Bernie Sanders voice, which I would be really annoying to me mostly, and it would certainly be annoying to you. But radical means like going at the root, right? Like going from the, starting at the, tearing it all up, right? Starting at the beginning. So there you go. All right.
Shorish?
Shoresh. Shoresh is root. Where is that?
It's in my little head.
Your little head? Yeah, let's put it on the board. This is so Shoresh is root. It looks like this. Shoresh. I think you can also write it with the absent, with just the dot on top, but then it gets a little confusing. So, okay, Shoresh. All right, so there's the roots and the verb roots. Okay, so here are your patterns, right? I just want to read down the columns because then you really get it. Let's read down the masculine singular perfect column. You ready? We'll do it together. Shama, Shamar, Malach, Halach, Zachar, Ama. And there's those nice, they don't have any of the troublemaker letters. They're shlemim, they're shalem verb roots, no problems. It's beautiful, all right? Let's do the second column, the feminine singular. Sham'a, Shamra, Malcha, Halcha, Zahra, Amda. All she did. And the first column is he did. Right? And in Hebrew. In English, the English word and is not a separate word in Hebrew. Instead, the letter Vav is attached to the beginning of a word. Okay? Father. Av is just a father. V'av means and a father, or just and father. Hamelech means the king. V'hamelech would be and the king. So vi. Okay. Now, I'm going to explain something that will just make your eyes light up and your heart go pitter-patter. Okay. Occasionally, instead of saying and as v, you say it as u.
Right.
You know why?
Because the next letter.
Is a labial. If it is a, meaning uses your lips, right? If the first letter of the word you're attaching and to, right, is v or b or m, right? Then instead of v, it usually becomes u. For example, here's our pal. Here it is just the dot for the O and for the shin. Here's our pal Moshe, right? If I want to say Aaron and Moses, I don't say Aharon v'Moshe, because v'Moshe is a little hard to say. I say Aharon u'Moshe. Right?
I know I brought this up last time. That
Go.
I have I like when kids want to say Vu Moshe, like they see that as a Vav and then the dot representing the U.
And how do you explain that? Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. That's vu.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually vu. Right? But this has to make a choice. Right? It's either going to be a v or an u. It's not going to be both. Right? The most maddeningly confusing word with that is unfortunately one that's really common in the prayer book and that you have to teach kids, and that's this one right here. In fact, it's in every bracha.
You're saying mitzvah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Let's do this one. Now let's just do mitzvah. Mitzvah. Right? Now, the really cruel thing is if you're being really specific and you're using all the dots that are there grammatically, it actually looks like that. Mitzvah. Why does it look like that? Because mitzvah, right, and the verb form mitzaveh is a PL root. It's one of those ones where the middle letter is doubled, right? So, or you get this monstrosity, asher kitshanu be mitzvo tav vitzivanu, right? So where is that? So what that actually is, right, a doubled vav, right, with then the O next to it, okay? And again, I think if you were going to be really picky, you would do that, which is completely bizarre and confusing, right? So they don't. But the reason that's not vu Moshe, right, is because there's nothing here to make a v sound, right? If it was going to be vo, like mitzvotav, it would be that. And some prayer books will be nice enough to offset this dot and not stick it right over to sort of hint that that's a separate O, right? Or if you wanted it to be vo, if you wanted it to be vo, you could do that, right? Because essentially in mitzvotav, this is a doubled vav, right?
I like this, the explanation. I know with explaining to kids, just like pick it. It can't be both.
Right.
Like in this case, like it can't be.
Yeah,
both.
it's not right. It's going to be
Yeah.
either one or the other.
has to be
And if it's a
vowel.
v, then there's no vowel.
Yeah, then there's no vowel.
Right.
There's no vowel for it.
Is
Right?
there a mnemonic for these labials? Like I think, like with the ooh, like I think I heard Rabbi
Yeah.
say like boom something or bum moon.
Boomaf or
Boomaf, yeah.
or just boomf, which I think is funnier. Boomf, right? Bet,
So you use
Vav,
ooh.
oo or v, right? Mem, and then this is just added in there and then fe. So it's bet, vav, mem. I'll make a final fe. Those letters. Those are the labials.
What does that mean? Oh, that's
The labial,
gotcha.
right? It'll become oo before that.
Yep.
Okay. Now there are a few. If you go back on page 35, because we gotta wrap up in like a minute or two. There are some outliers. They also show you, right? So, all right, the word "ve" ordinarily takes the "I" vowel. So it says David and Abraham and Ruth. David v'Avraham v'Rut. David stood and he walked. David amad v'hu halach. Look, a real sentence, right? Hana'ar v'hana'ara, the young guy and the young woman. The v and is sometimes written oo, pronounced oo, not vu, or you can just show them that part in the book right there.
Yeah.
You see where it says pronounced oo and not? We're at the bottom of page 35. Yeah, okay. It may also appear as vi, va, ve, ve, or va. These variations do not change the meaning of and. It will. All of those variations have to do with the first letter of the word it's attaching to, making it hard to pronounce or weird, right? So when we say we bow before the ark, we don't say v'anachnu, we say va'anachnu, and we bow, and it has to do with because anachnu has that patach shva compound vowel over it, so that affects it. So look. A son and a daughter, bain uvat, because bain vivat, right? Be kind of hard to say. There's the labial thing. A house and an animal, bait uvehema. Notice it's not ubehema, because why was there a dot in the bet? Because it was the first letter of the word, right? And now it's not the first letter of the word anymore because you added u, so the dot drops out. Like I said, Moshe and Pharaoh. Pharaoh is paro. Moshe and Pharaoh would be Moshe u pharaoh, because it's no longer the first letter, it drops out. David v'Yerushalayim, right? So why is it an E? Because you're not going to have two shvas in a row, v'Yerushalayim, right? So it's v'Yerushalayim. Davar ve'emet, right? There, that little half thing, that chataf segol, it's called. By the way, these little the vowels with the two dots that are under a guttural letter that had the added shva, like the segol with the two dots or the patach with the two dots, they're called a chataf or a kamatz. Wait. Yeah, it's called a chataf, patach or a chataf segol, and chataf means to snatch. It's just sort of like grabbed and stuck in there to kind of like make it pronounceable under the guttural letter. All right. In the above examples at the very bottom, notice the pronunciation words containing the beged kefet letters, which we're so smart because we learned it last week, right? May change. The change in pronunciation does not change the meaning of the word. Okay. Page 36. Use of from in Hebrew. Can we go a few extra minutes because I started late? Like 5 more minutes? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. The word mean, from, has 2 forms. It can appear fully spelled as mean. It can also be attached to a word as a prefix, right? Like me or may. So, mi bait, from a house. Min habayit, from the house. Me ish, from a person or from a man. Min ha'ish, from the man. Me hamelech, okay, from the king. Min hamelech, from the king. By the way, so look at the word mibayit, right? What's the full word, the separate word for from? Mean. Remember I told you nun is a weak letter, it often drops out. What happens when the weak letter gets pushed off the cliff, right? It gets pushed off by a dagesh chazak, right? So the dot in the bet for mi bayit, right, is a dagesh chazak. That's why up right above it says when it's attached to a word, it's attached as the letter with the dot, min plus a dot after it. So mi bayit, right? Why does it then become me ish instead of me? That is compensation for the fact that the aleph can't take that, an aleph won't take a dagesh chazak. So to indicate that, it becomes me instead of me. Right? Why is it me hamelech? Because you can't put the dagesh for the mean, you can't put the dagesh for the from in the hey, so it becomes me, right? So on. Use of it in Hebrew. The masculine pronoun he, who, he, is used for it when referring to masculine nouns. The feminine pronoun he for referring to feminine nouns. So, look at this wonderful sentence here. Habayit amad, which means what?
House stood.
The house stood. Vihu shamar mishpacha. So how do you translate vihu? And it, meaning the house, shamar, it guarded, mishpacha, a family. Okay? Hamishpacha, the family, zachra, remembered. Vihi, what's vihi?
It.
And it, meaning the family, halcha el Yerushalayim, they went to Jerusalem. Strange sentence, but
Because the family's
feminine.
feminine.
Yeah,
Okay.
family is feminine, right, as a noun. Right. Now, in English, you could say the family remembered and they went to Pittsburgh because we're sloppy, right? And because some nouns we treat as being collective, but in Hebrew, grammatically, it doesn't work. It's got to match.
Right.
Yeah. All right. How are we doing? Okay. All right. Same like last time. See where you try to do the exercises. Please make special note of questions. In other words, if there's stuff that doesn't make sense, mark it up. Write your questions in because I'm all about trying to answer those questions for you. Quick look ahead. In the next chapter, we start looking at plural nouns and then plural verbs. And then we can start looking at some really interesting sentences. I am going to try to start, if not next week, then the week after, pulling some passages from the prayer book or from the Torah that let you kind of like see some of this operating in that context. Because you'll see, you'll learn a lot pretty quickly here. And if you're dying to know about et, it comes up in chapter 8. Look at the middle of page 61. Forbidden knowledge, the word et. There it is. Not to be shared with anyone under the age of 18. Okay? It's a pleasure to teach you. Thank you for helping me to have such fun with you. See you next time. Okay?
Awesome.
Go team. All right. So now how do we turn this off? We slide